When a 5-year-old boy climbed the zoo enclosure to see the giants, disaster struck. He slipped and plummeted 12 feet straight into the gorilla pit. As he lay unconscious on the concrete, a massive alpha male charged toward him. The crowd feared the worst, but what the gorilla did next stunned the world. It was supposed to be a peaceful family day out at the Jersey Zoo, but it turned into a global nightmare in a split second. Levon Merritt, just 5 years old and full of energy, wanted a better look at the giants of the jungle. But while his parents were distracted, disaster struck. The boy climbed up for a closer look, but then he lost his balance and he fell into the gorilla pit. The impact was sickening. Levon hit the ground hard and was instantly knocked unconscious. The crowd above froze, a collective gasp sucking the air out of the enclosure. Then the panic set in. People screamed for help. "Someone help him!" a woman screamed from above. But the keepers couldn't just rush in because the gorillas were loose, and rushing in could trigger an attack. Levon's mother stood frozen at the railing, tears streaming down her face. Her baby was down there alone and unconscious, and she couldn't reach him. "Please," she whispered, "please be okay." But then something moved in the shadows, something massive. The crowd fell silent as they saw it. A huge silverback gorilla was emerging from the corner of the enclosure. It was Jambo, a massive silverback gorilla. To the terrified mother watching from above, he looked like a predator closing in on easy prey. People began to panic. "Oh no," someone muttered, "the gorilla is going toward the boy." Jambo moved slowly, deliberately. His eyes were fixed on the small, motionless figure in the gray shirt. "Get away from him!" Levon's mother screamed down into the pit. But Jambo didn't stop. He kept moving closer. The distance between them was shrinking with every step. The screams from above reached a fever pitch. People begged for the keepers to intervene, terrified of the massive ape. But then, chaos turned to silence. Jambo didn't attack. He didn't rage. Instead, he did the unthinkable. The massive king of the troop sat down gently beside him and extended a heavy hand, pausing for a second before checking on the boy with surprising tenderness. "What's he doing?" someone in the crowd whispered. "I don't believe it," a zoo visitor said. "Is the gorilla protecting him?" It seemed impossible. But that's exactly what it looked like. Jambo wasn't acting like a wild predator. He was acting like a guardian. Levon's mother couldn't process what she was seeing. Relief and fear mixed together in her chest. "Stay still, baby," she called down, her voice shaking. "Just stay still." But the danger wasn't over, not even close. From the upper part of the enclosure, 2 younger male gorillas appeared. They were curious about the strange new object in their territory. "Oh no," a keeper muttered, watching from the control room. "The blackbacks are coming down." These younger males didn't have Jambo's restraint. They were impulsive and unpredictable. If they reached Levon before help arrived, the outcome could be devastating. The first blackback moved closer, his eyes locked on the unconscious boy. He took one step, then another. His curiosity was growing. To him, the unconscious boy wasn't a life to be saved. He was a foreign object to be investigated. In gorilla society, investigation is a physical act. If they reached Levon, they wouldn't check for a pulse. They would poke, prod, and likely drag him across the concrete to claim him as a prize. And for a child with a fractured skull, even a playful tug from a 200-pound ape would be a death sentence. The crowd gasped as the first male moved closer, testing the limits and daring the silverback to stop him. The massive silverback's body language changed instantly. His spine straightened, his muscles tensed. He didn't make a sound, but the message was clear. The younger male hesitated, slowing to a stop. He glanced at Jambo, then back at the motionless boy. The younger male took one step closer, but Jambo didn't roar or charge. He simply positioned himself directly between the boy and the approaching males, effectively drawing an invisible line as if screaming a clear warning. Do not cross. High above, the keepers were frantically preparing. They grabbed wooden planks. They radioed for backup. But entering the enclosure was incredibly risky. One wrong move could trigger chaos. We need to move now, one keeper said urgently. But if we go in too fast, we could set off the whole troop, another replied. They were running out of time. The situation was becoming more dangerous with every passing second. And then Levon began to wake up. High above, Levon's mother was living through a nightmare. She could only watch as Jambo towered over her son. Through the panic, she managed to scream down into the pit, "Levon, stay down! Stay still!" But the boy woke up. Disoriented and in pain, Levon did what any terrified child would do. He began to cry. To a wild animal, a high-pitched scream sounds like wounded prey. Agitated by the noise, the younger gorillas surged forward. Jambo knew he was running out of time. Sensing the immediate danger, the massive silverback charged the troop. He didn't need to roar. His presence was enough to drive them up the hill and away from the vulnerable child. Driven by a protective instinct, he stood his ground, ensuring Levon was safe. "This is our chance," one of the keepers shouted. "We have to go now." With the silverback holding the line, two keepers dove straight into the danger zone. They didn't have guns. They were armed with nothing but wooden planks. Jambo stood his ground, his eyes fixed on the men entering his territory. He could have charged but he didn't. Instead, he simply watched, as if he understood, as if he knew they were there to help. The keepers moved with practiced speed. One stood guard, eyes locked on the gorillas up the hill, while the other scooped Levon into his arms. The boy was limp, his small body like a rag doll against the keeper's chest. "I've got him!" the keeper shouted. "Let's move!" As they climbed back up, the crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in a collective sob of relief. Levon was barely conscious. He needed medical attention immediately. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. They carefully placed Levon on a stretcher. His injuries were serious: a fractured skull, broken bones, and internal injuries they couldn't yet see. "We need to airlift him to Southampton Hospital now," one paramedic said urgently. As the helicopter lifted off, the crowd remained at the gorilla enclosure. People couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed. "Did you see that?" one man said, his voice filled with awe. "The gorilla! It protected him." "I've never seen anything like it," a woman replied. It was like the gorilla knew the boy needed help. The world was left asking one question: why? Why did a wild animal, possessed of such immense strength, choose to protect a human child? Unknown to the crowd, Jambo carried a deep, silent grief. To understand why he acted gently instead of violently, we need to look back in time. Years back, before Levon fell into the enclosure, the concrete habitat was more than just an exhibit to Jambo. It was simply his territory. And at the center of that territory was his firstborn son, Miko. In the wild, a silverback is the leader of the group, responsible for keeping watch and reacting to danger. But with Miko, Jambo was also a patient teacher. Keepers often observed the 400-pound male sitting calmly with his infant, showing him how to peel fruit without crushing it. When Miko tried to imitate his father's chest beat, producing only a light, hollow sound, Jambo responded with a low, rumbling vocalization, which was a gorilla's sign of approval. The two were rarely apart. Miko represented the future of the group, and Jambo devoted himself to protecting him. But then, something happened. It began during a harsh winter when a respiratory virus, mild in humans but dangerous for great apes, spread through the troop. One morning, Miko didn't come to feed. He lay curled in the straw, his breathing shallow and strained. Jambo sensed something was wrong. He stopped patrolling the enclosure and settled beside his son, using his body to shield him from the cold air drifting through the vents. For 3 days, Jambo barely ate or rested. He paced, vocalized, and reacted to every sound, as if trying to drive away a danger he could not see. When the veterinary team finally intervened, they arrived not with food, but with nets and sedatives. Miko needed urgent isolation and treatment. Jambo didn't understand their intentions. He only saw unfamiliar figures approaching his weakened infant. He rushed the barrier, striking it with enough force to shake the viewing area. "We need to sedate him," someone shouted. "Now?" It took 3 tranquilizer darts before he collapsed, still facing the spot where Miko lay. When Jambo awoke, the enclosure was quiet. He immediately looked for Miko and searched every corner, but his son was gone. The veterinary team had done everything they could, but the virus had been too aggressive. Miko died 3 days after being taken for treatment. Jambo never knew the details. He only knew that his son was gone, and he had been unable to protect him. Miko's loss changed Jambo. He became more reserved. The playful moments disappeared. He carried a weight that the keepers could see, but never fully understand. And deep within him, a quiet resolve formed. If he ever found another life in need of protection, he would not fail again. The keepers noticed the change, but didn't fully grasp its significance. Not until years later. Not until that Sunday afternoon when a 5-year-old boy fell into the enclosure. Because when Jambo looked at Levon lying unconscious on the concrete, he didn't see a stranger. He saw a second chance. Levon had suffered a fractured skull and severe bone injuries. He was immediately airlifted to Southampton Hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to save him. Against all odds, he made a full recovery. Back at the zoo, something extraordinary was happening. Word of the incident had spread. Fast, local news crews had arrived. Cameras were everywhere. "This is unprecedented," one reporter said into her microphone. "A wild gorilla protecting a human child. The footage is absolutely stunning." In interviews years later, Levon revealed that he doesn't remember the fall or the rescue. He was unconscious the whole time. But he knows exactly who he owes his life to. Today, Levon is a father himself. When he looks at his own children, the weight of that day hits home. Jambo didn't just save a 5-year-old boy in 1986. He saved a future father and a lifetime of memories that almost never happened. Jambo lived for another 6 years after that fateful day. He remained the undisputed king of the enclosure, ruling with the same quiet authority that had saved Levon's life. But on September 16, 1992, the king's heart finally stopped. His death was mourned not just by the zoo staff, but by millions around the world who had seen the footage of his mercy. Usually, when a zoo animal passes, they are quietly removed, and life goes on. But Jambo was different. He had transcended his species. To honor him, the zoo commissioned a permanent tribute, a life-sized bronze statue that now stands guard at the wildlife park. But the world wasn't done honoring him. On the 20th anniversary of his death, Jambo received an honor usually reserved for national heroes. The Jersey Post issued a special set of commemorative stamps to celebrate the life of the gentle giant. As an adult, Levon returned to the zoo. He walked the same path his 5-year-old self had taken. He stood by the wall where he had slipped. But this time, instead of looking down into a pit of terror, he looked up at the bronze face of his savior. Standing there, Levon realized the true magnitude of what happened. It is fitting that his name, Jambo, is the Swahili word for hello. It is a word used to welcome friends. On that cool Sunday afternoon, the king of the enclosure lived up to his name. He didn't greet the intruder with violence. He greeted him with a welcome that echoed around the world. Jambo the gentle giant may be gone, but the legacy of the day he bowed down to a child will live forever. If you visit the zoo today, you will see the statue standing silent and watchful. It serves as a reminder that true strength isn't about how hard you can strike, but about who you are willing to protect.